Welcome to HECTV's live interactive program that's part of St. Louis.
The whole production is pulled together.
It's going to be a steel bridge.
The way the cockpit is designed.
The highest rated green building in the world.
Welcome to HECTV Live. Hello and welcome to Opera Theater St. Louis, located here in St. Louis, Missouri. We're here in one of the rehearsal rooms at Opera Theater St. Louis because here is where the Metro Theater Company is rehearsing their upcoming production of The Giver, which will play at Edison Theater on the campus of Washington University throughout the month of January here in St. Louis. Today you're going to have the opportunity to learn what it's like to bring the characters of the novel The Giver to life. You'll have the chance to interact with actors and the directors who are part of this production, and of course, as always, you'll be able to ask your questions. With HECTV Live, we're being joined by interactive video conference schools across the country, but we know some of you are joining on the web and via television, so email us your questions to live@hectv.org. That's live@hectv.org. This is the third in a series of programs that we're doing related to The Giver. In October, we had the opportunity to meet directly with the author, Lois Lowry, and then in November, we had a book club discussion on important issues and themes of the book. Those stories and programs are archived online on our website at hectv.org and also downloadable for free for you on iTunes U. So don't forget to look at those previous programs as well. Today, our focus is on the characters of The Giver. You'll meet some of the actors who are portraying different characters, and you'll have a chance to ask a wide variety of questions. Don't forget the email is live@hectv.org. The book The Giver, for those of you watching who may not be familiar with the story, is a rather iconic story now for lots of young people in the country. The Newberry Award-winning book, written in the early 1990s, is now read by students across the nation in grades basically 6 through 10. And it's a story that is probably familiar to a lot of the kids who are joining us today. If they've not read a book, then they've probably heard about it before. Eric Coble got permission from the author Lois Lowry to adapt that into a stage play. Now, many of you who are familiar with the story may be thinking, well, that could be exceptionally difficult to do. I mean, The Giver the society that they live in has no color, for example. There's no music. How do you put a stage production together and have it all be in black and white? Well, we wanted to give you a sense of what that might be like today for our program as well. Because obviously, as we go back today and get into the world of The Giver, this show's going to come to you in black and white. So we're going to switch from the color world that I exist in right now to the world of The Giver. And we're going to go into that colorless world as we meet Carol North, the artistic director of Metro Theater Company, who's also directing this production. Carol, thanks so much for being here.
Hi, Tim. Great to see you.
Always a great pleasure.
Thank you.
Let me get you a microphone so the world can actually hear you speak as well, which would probably be a good thing. Well, first and foremost, let's find out what made this a play that you wanted to direct?
I think first it was just reading the book. I didn't even think about the play, but when I read that book, it gave me the creeps in the best kind of way. I think it's a haunting story that gets under the skin. And when I realized there was a play, I thought, I just sort of shelved that notion. But in looking for just the right next project to do with Edison, there was something about The Giver that was right. And I think what I love about the story and about working on this play is that it asks such huge questions and that it is a young person at the center of the story who's wrestling with them.
Well, now, Metro Theater Company is a theater for young people, right?
That is right.
Talk a little bit about the mission of the organization.
Yeah. Our mission is that, inspired by the intelligence and emotional wisdom of young people, we create professional theater, we foster inclusive community, and we nurture meaningful connections through the arts. So that's a lot, but what we do is find meaningful ways to connect with young people and their families by asking them big questions, inviting them to think deeply.
Well, we're going to have lots of thinking deeply, hopefully, from the students that are joining us interactively today as well, and our students here at Lift for Life. Don't forget, if you've got a question, just come right on over to the microphone. And I want to check with our video conference schools to see who's made it into the bridge, because I know we've had a little in and out just a few moments ago. So I want to go to Hinckley, Minnesota. Hinckley, if you're there, come right on in. And Sadie, I know, had a question about the relationship of the play to the book. So Sadie, if you're there, go ahead and ask it.
I was wondering how true the play is to the book.
As a person who's read both the book and now the play, how true do you think this play is to the book?
Eric Coble did a phenomenal job adapting this. Clearly, not everything that is in the novel is on stage. He had to make some choices. And what he focused on were the pivotal moments of discovery, of places in the story where Jonas has to make a choice or a decision, and he's wrestling with something. There are wonderful details in the script, but not everything is there. I would say everyone who sees the play will recognize the story they know, but there are some pieces that are left out.
Let's go down to Lewisburg, Tennessee, and Oak Grove Elementary. Oak Grove, do you have a question for Carol right now about the nature of the play in general, about directing?
Why did you choose to direct this?
Meet the ass.
I don't remember what it was.
Why did she choose to direct this?
Okay, we talked a little bit about that.
Right, right. I think it's such a great story, and it's a great story for young people. Many of them are familiar with it, but I think it's a great story to have conversations about after the experience of theater. And that's one of the things we try to do at Metro Theater Company, is give audiences material that's rich enough, that's provocative enough, that you want to think about it and really plumb the questions that it asks.
Now, from a technical perspective, did it intrigue you as well, in the sense that obviously we're on part of the set here in the rehearsal space that's exceptionally gray. I mean, this is a play without color, supposedly, and yet theater is such a visual medium, as well as an oral medium.
Imagine the challenges. Yeah, we've been thinking and working on this for months, and I suppose the technical challenges are part of what invigorated me, scared me more than a little, because there are so many choices in the theater. And how do you invite people to come to a theater where we do see color? I see the color of your beard, I see the color of your shirt. How do we create a world that is essentially an imagined world? It's easy to do that in text in a novel, but how do you do it in the theater?
Very cool. Don't forget, in January, we'll get a chance to see how they've done that when we go live to the Edison. Granbury Middle School in Granbury, Texas, if you've been able to make it into the bridge, please unmute. Do you have a question for Carol?
How difficult is it to get your actors not to show emotion in the play?
Ah, what an interesting question that is. It's impossible to ask actors not to use emotions, and in fact, if I tried to do that, even if they could do it, the audience would be bored to tears. So it's not a question of not using emotions, it's just how do we select the ways that we're going to tell the story moment by moment. For example, the play begins with the family sharing feelings. Now, who wouldn't like to be in a family like that, where everybody is at the table together and sharing stories of their day and what matters to them? At the beginning of the story, the same way Lois Lowry wound this, she sets up something that's rather appealing. And then gradually the rug is pulled out as Jonas discovers what's missing in his community. So we're not trying to do it without emotion on stage.
And you'll have the chance to ask that question of actors specifically, too, because we're going to be joined by them in just a minute. This is a play to a large extent about memory, and how those memories are avoided by society, but are then transferred, obviously, from the giver to Jonas. We had the opportunity in our October program to ask Lois Lowry about where her idea for this story came about, and she'll talk with you about that now, and then we'll meet the actors of the play.
I began by thinking about memory. And the reason I was thinking about memory is because my father was very old, and he was losing his memory. And I began to think how important memory is. And what if there were a way we could control memory in people? What if I could magically maybe put my hands on my father's head as he sat there in the nursing home and bring his memory back? What if there were people who could do that, a whole community who could do that? And when I sat down to write the book, I realized that because that wasn't true yet, I would have to set the book in the future. So I just made it an unnamed time. People often ask me, what year is this book taking place? And the answer is, I don't know. It's sometime in the future. But it's a time when technology has developed to the point where they can actually control human memory.
So it's definitely a memory play, and obviously the transfer of those memories become extremely important. We know you're going to have a lot of questions for the actors, and we want to go through the rest of the gang of people who have joined us here. And we'll just start up there by Carol, because Nick's with us. Nick, introduce yourself, and it might be a surprise for people to learn what role you play.
I play the role of the giver. My name is Nick Crea. Glad to be here.
Thanks so much. And Sarah Rugo. Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi there. My name is Sarah Rugo. I'm the production manager for Metro Theater Company.
So as you ask questions about the staging and how they went about doing that, Sarah will be your go-to person.
My name's Mitchell List, and I'm going to be playing Jonas.
My name's Anna Nielsen, and I'm playing Fiona and Rosemary.
Hey, my name is Sarah, and I play one of the lilies.
My name's Ian Miller, and I play Asher.
I'm Dave, and I play the father.
So it's a wide variety of folks we've got joining us today, and we're looking forward to your questions for them. And let's start by going to Oak Grove Elementary, because I know, Oak Grove, you guys had a question about the familiarity that the actors had with the story. What is that question you wanted to ask?
Had you read The Giver before you got the part?
They can't hear you good.
That's a good question. Had any of you read the play before? Go ahead, Ian. Had you read the book? Were you familiar with the story?
Well, I first read the novel in, I think, 4th grade in elementary school, and then in 7th grade we studied it in class, actually. We had a unit on it. And then when I was getting involved with this production, Carol asked us to each reread the book, so I sat down and I peeled through it again alongside with the play. So it was interesting looking at it from, at a bunch of different ages, a different perspective.
Well, give the students an example about that, maybe. How did you read it differently as an actor than you read it just as a kid reading a book that he thought he was going to like?
Well, when I sat down to read it again, I had already gone through the play, looked at my lines, my character. One thing I did in particular was look for ways that Asher's character was revealed in the novel that wasn't explicitly determined in the text. So little things that Asher did, little stories that happened, little adverbs, that Lois Lowry adds in there about the way he says things that aren't, included in the stage directions or the lines themselves.
Very cool, and I want to remind everybody who's watching us over the web and television that your set is not gone crazy. We are black and white for a reason. We're going back into the colorless world of The Giver for our program today. So think about what it's like when you lose color. How does the TV picture look different for you than it normally does? And think about that maybe just as a reaction to the experience of being in this world for a little bit. Let's go up to Hinckley, Minnesota. Questions for the actors?
Yes, I had a question for the actor of Jonas. What were the most monumental changes you had to show on stage to make it clear that Jonas had gone through a rite of passage?
The receiving of memories was something I really had to try and picture seeing for the very first time, and how receiving that memory changes Jonas's reactions to certain things because he has it from that point on. He doesn't forget it. It's with him now. So you see my character gradually get more weight through the show as I experience more traumatic memories. So
That's a great question. We also had the chance some students asked Lois Lowry a question when we talked with her in October about where these characters came from. And I think some of this background information might be interesting for you as you begin to think about other questions as well. We'll run that short segment for you now.
When I'm writing a book, of course I have to make up the characters. And the one I pay the most attention to is always going to be, of course, the main character. That's called the protagonist. When I start a book, I have to decide what kind of character that will be, and I always start out thinking boy or girl, male or female. I've written 36, 37 books now. Most of my books have a female main character. You can guess why that is. It's because I'm female, and so it's easier for me to put myself into the mind of a girl. But a number of my books, a smaller number, have a boy as a main character, and The Giver is one of those. So I sat at my desk and I thought, okay, going to create this community. There's got to be a main character, male or female. And I don't remember now why I chose boy. I could have made it a girl. But for some reason I thought, okay, boy. Then I have to choose what kind of character it is. Every character in a book has to have a personality. They have to be different from one another, and if you think of the characters in The Giver, Jonas, the main character, has a particular personality, but his best friend, Asher, is a very different kind of boy, and his other friend, Fiona, of course, is a girl, and she has a particular personality. As for their names, the names just come to me, and if they seem right, I keep them. Sometimes I change a name in the middle of the book. And I go back, and of course on a computer you find and replace. Sometimes I'll go back and change a character's name. Those all came to me and they stayed. I didn't change any of those names. And they were names that just felt right. But one of them, and that's the character of Asher, was named for this reason. I have a grandson who's now a freshman in college. He's 19. But he was a baby at the time that I was writing that book, and he was named Asher. So I just snitched his name and put it in the book, and he, of course, didn't mind.
So there you get to go inside the mind of the author. She begins to think about where those characters come from, and the intriguing idea that Asher was just a name she really liked, obviously. Let's go down to Laredo, Texas. Laredo, a question for the actors or director?
What is one thing you want the audience to understand about your character?
Oh, very cool. Sarah, would you like to start as Lily? What is one thing you'd like the audience to understand about the character of Lily?
I think what I want the people to understand about Lily is that she's very imaginative, and I guess the family unit with Lily and Jonas and father and mother, we all talk about Lily being a storyteller, being chosen when she's 12, she gets chosen for storyteller because she likes to tell stories. And so she's also very cute and very bouncy, and she can be very bubbly.
Very cool, Sarah. And Anna, you want to talk a little bit about Fiona?
I think Fiona's character is very timid, and she's different from Asher in the sense that she's very conserved, and she's very mature, I think, and she always kind of keeps things going on track. There's a scene in particular that I'm thinking of when everyone's talking about how anxious they are for the ceremony, and she comes in, and you know that she's anxious too, but she wants to comfort her friends, and she's always kind of there to help do that.
Well, let's hear from the older actor's perspective as well, the more experienced actor's perspective, perhaps I should say instead. David, as father?
Well, those that are familiar with the story know perhaps what the father's job entails. He's a nurturer, but there are other things that are involved in his job, and so I think people should know that he's not a bad guy. That's his job. He does what he knows, and that's the way things are.
Very cool. That was a great question. Let's go to Granbury Middle School in Texas. Granbury, a question right now?
How are you going to show that Jonas's eyes are different?
Oh, there's a specific... Sarah or Carol, who wants to talk about that?
Boy, you really pay attention to detail in that novel. That's great. That's one of those details that we just have to imply on stage. At the moment that topic comes up, baby Gabriel has just come home with father, and the family is meeting him for the first time. So what I've done as a director is make sure that all the characters are focusing on the little basket where Gabriel is. And then Lily discovers that his eyes are just like Jonas's. So it's a question of her paying attention to Gabriel in the basket, and then looking up at her brother, and then looking back at Gabriel. And that establishes eye similarity. But, you know, some members of the audience are going to be so far away they wouldn't be able to see eye color anyway. And I think it's little techniques like that that tell the story with action.
Very cool question. We're going to begin to have a scene here in a bit, but I wanted to go to a few more questions before that happens. Hinckley, another question from you guys?
Go for it.
I have a question about Asher. Do you think he would leave the community after he started learning more over the years about what's kind of going on?
Asher, do you think he'd leave?
I think Asher wouldn't. I don't know. I think Asher kind of likes the place he's in. He's kind of quirky. He's kind of out there. But I think he doesn't want to know too much as a character. And I don't think he might not even understand it or be able to grasp the things that are going on. So I think he might kind of just put it aside and dismiss, I guess, that reality. That's what I'd say.
Okay, cool.
I think he'd stay where he is.
Oak Grove Elementary, another question?
Jonas, what was the most challenging part of your character?
Oh, Jonas.
I'd say the most challenging part would be to show how the memories are affecting him, to portray how he is becoming different from everyone else, that he no longer fits in, he no longer feels a sense of belonging, and he's no longer he no longer feels comfort where he is. With the receiving of memories, that's again a tricky thing to kind of make the audience believe that you are seeing what is being portrayed.
These are all really good questions about character, and I think one of the things that might interest you is what Lois Lowry thought was important in terms of creating a character. Maybe we'll give some insight to students as well who are portraying these parts now. But like, how do you create a character in a book? And I'm sure Eric Coble thought about it from the play's perspective. How do you create a character in a book that's interesting enough to pay attention to, you want to get involved with, but also is true to the elements of the story that you're trying to get across? And as Lois talks to you about the nature of character and how she wants to go about creating them, we'll set up for the very first scene that you're going to see when we get back.
A book character has to be well-rounded. He can't be, if you were writing a description of a character that you're making up, and you just wrote popular, smart, fun, well, all of that is great, but it's not a very well-rounded character. And so even a character who's smart and popular and fun has to have some flaws. And you have to think what those might be. Think of people you know and what kinds of characteristics they have. And even a villain, even an evil character in a book. And actually, the book The Giver doesn't have any truly evil characters. But if you were writing a book in which there was somebody who was truly the villain, you would be careful to make sure that he had some small, nice characteristics as well, so that he would be a well-rounded character. Creating a character is a lot of fun, but it's work, and you have to sit there with a piece of paper or in your computer on the screen and write down a whole lot of different things that go into making a character seem real.
I think that insight from Lois Lowry is very interesting, and obviously these actors are going to get to portray all sorts of different shades of that character. We're about to go to a scene between the four kids, well actually three of the students, Asher and Fiona and Jonas, and I look forward to, and you're going to notice scripts are still in their hand. We're in the rehearsal space. I think to a large extent they have the lines memorized, but it's cool for you to be able to see the difference at this time between what it's like in rehearsal and what we'll be able to show you in January, full on in costume and on the stage environment. So I'll get out of the way, and Jonas, you guys can take it over.
Hello, Jonas.
Hello, Fiona.
I just found out. Our family's getting a new child at the ceremony. I'm so excited.
I'm just scared.
Are you sure scared is the right word?
I heard about a guy who was absolutely certain he was going to get assigned engineer, and instead, they gave him sanitation laborer. He went out the next day, jumped in the river, swam across, and joined the next community he came to. Nobody ever saw him again.
Somebody made that story up, Ash. My father said he heard it when he was a 12.
I can't even swim very well. My swimming instructor says I don't have the right boyishness or something.
Buoyancy.
Whatever, Fiona. I don't have it. I sink.
Have you ever once known of anyone, I mean, really known for sure, Asher, who joined another community?
No. But you can. It says so in the rules. If you don't fit in, you can apply for elsewhere and be released.
Well, how can someone not fit in?
We're all going to get just the right assignment. You'll see.
Thank you very much.
Asher, would you bring the bicycle back with you? Yeah. Because a question comes into my mind right now that I'd like to ask. And then we're going to go to student questions. And Laredo, we'll go to you first, and then we'll go to Granbury. Talk about the use of the bicycle as a prop that helped you with the lines of the scene. Because I noticed you used it in different ways, like as you were getting into the water and that kind of good thing. So let me give you the microphone so you can speak to that a little bit.
Yes, we've talked a lot in the production process about this bicycle in particular and its quirks. One thing is the kickstand, which up until today had a large ratchety sound whenever you put it, and was kind of difficult, and you know, whenever you try to put it down or up. But one of the things that I do in using this bicycle is, finding the quirks and in ways that I can use it instead of just standing here and saying the line and we're all just standing in a clump. Like, it's real life. Things are happening. and the ways in which the bicycle is making my life more difficult because it's, yeah.
Very cool, and it's beautifully painted gray.
Yes.
Very nicely done. Let's go to Laredo, Texas. Laredo, a question?
How will Jonas seeing color be portrayed in the play?
Oh, how are you seeing color being portrayed in the play?
Well, you might know that the first thing that Jonas sees color in is an apple. And during the scene, Asher and Jonas are having a good time. They're throwing an apple around. And we have a gray apple. And through some sleight of hand, it's going to turn a vibrant red apple. And, you know, Jonas looks at it, and he asks, is there something weird about the apple? And, of course, Asher sees nothing wrong with it. It's just a regular apple. And then later it gets switched back into gray. And so it's little tricks like that that we've placed in there, specific moments that we want the audience to see color that's distinguished from the usual gray of our show.
Very cool. Granbury, Texas, a question from you.
How does your play end?
Oh, how does the story end? Is there a difference between the ending of the play and the ending of the novel? Carol?
I think that's a place where Eric Kobel's skill as an adapter is demonstrated beautifully. He really has honored the end of the novel, which Jonas has been on his journey. He has escaped the community because he has to save Gabriel's life. He heads off on his bicycle. He has a little bit of food, but not enough. He goes as far. He's going back and back and back, actually, outside the community. Encounters storms. They're starving. They're suffering. Hypothermia is setting in, I'm sure. And he gets to a point where we might think this pair of kids could die right now, and that's when he hears music and sees light. So the end of the play takes Jonas to the very edge of the stage, as close as he can possibly be to the audience, and that's when we too will hear the music that Jonas is hearing. And I think it leaves us all with the same questions that we have reading Lois's novel, is we hope that he's going to be all right, but we don't know for sure.
Do you utilize any specific techniques to convey the emotion and meaning of the story to the audience? How do you play with the nature of the fact that you obviously want the audience to be very emotionally involved in the story, but the society is kind of emotionless?
Yeah. That's a tricky thing, and I think the first set of assumptions, you know, the stereotype choice might be, well, people play with, the actors must play with less emotion. But I think that's the wrong choice, because at the beginning of the story, just like the novel, we've got to be drawn in. So the first scene in the play is the family at the table, and it begins with laughter. They're having a great meal. They're sharing feelings. They're sharing stories of their days. They're connecting. And it's only gradually, as Jonas discovers through his lessons with the giver, what has been taken away, that we begin to see the cost of this community. But if we set it up like a bunch of robotic characters at the beginning, the audience would immediately be alienated from them, and instead what we want to do is draw them in.
David, what is it like on stage working with actors to create what would be an honest family dynamic?
Well, you think of your own experiences in a family and how you interact with them and how you treat younger ones of the family, how you interact with a spouse or a loved one, and you bring that quality to the scene or to the play as a whole.
Olivia from Hinckley, you had a question for the actors as well about the black and white world versus color. Go right ahead.
I was wondering how the actors, how did you guys get yourselves into the mindset of, being in a colorless world when we're so used to being in this world of, infinite choices and possibilities?
And I'll let you start.
Well, that's a really hard thing to do because, like you said, everyone sees in color. It's just a common thing for us. So when I'm on stage acting, I'm not thinking that there's no color. I just need to make my character think that there's no color, because it'd be pretty impossible for me to imagine no color. And so I just let the character do that, and that's how I do that.
Now, Nick, you've been acting for a lengthy period of time. Nothing personal against that, but a little bit longer than the young people that we're seeing here. Give the students an idea about how you approach this role and that particular question.
Let me just say, first of all, that for me the most important element of a production is the audience, that we're telling the story for the audience, so that any emotion that goes on in the theater or any discovery that goes on in the theater should happen in the audience, so that I'm not going to lose emotional control during the show. My character is the guy who contains all of the memories of the society, you know, the good and the bad. So it's very important for me to be able to have free rein, to be, you know, up and to down, and that's part of the giver's issue. The rest of the world that we live in is a colorless place. It's a place without music. It's a place without emotions and all of that. But, you know, I think of this metaphor that I don't know what it's like to fly because I'm not a flying human being. And so I live in a world where human beings don't fly. But if someone were to come by and say, oh, do you miss flying? I wouldn't be able to relate to that. And I think this is that world. It's, do you miss color? Well, what's color? What is music? So for me, I have an easy part in the show, is that I can go the whole full range of emotion and color in my character, whereas the other actors can go the full range of emotion in their characters, but the director will be tamping it down a little bit, you know, to keep it within the normal range, not a robotic range, but a normal range.
Very cool. Let's go to Oak Grove Elementary in Tennessee again.
I don't think so. I think we've already asked all of our questions.
Okay, if new ones come to your mind, I will come back to you. Don't worry about that. Let's go down to Laredo, Texas again.
Actually, we have 2 questions.
All right, just ask them back to back then. Go right ahead.
How will lighting play a role in the play?
What is your favorite part of your character?
Oh, 2 different questions. Sarah, I'll let you talk a little bit about lighting first.
That's a very good question about lighting. I think that lighting will actually be one of the most important elements in the play, other than the actors who will be on stage. The sound is also going to be a very important element that in a lot of cases will work along hand in hand with the lighting. So many of those memories that Jonas experiences are done through both sound and lighting, and that's what sets the environment for the snow, for example, that he experiences for the very first time. We hear the wind and everything that kind of creates that chilly sort of feeling for all of us. And then, of course, it's also a very big part of building and representing the character of Gabriel, who is the infant in the show. We're not using a real baby on stage. In so many ways, they would be way too unpredictable for us to use in our play. But he cries like babies do, and he, you know, makes other baby noises, gurgles, and coughs a little bit, things like that. So Carol has actually been spending a lot of time listening to all different examples of baby sounds that the sound designer, Rusty Wandel, has submitted to her to use in different parts of the play. So we use that. And then we use all different sorts of sound effects as well to help kind of set the environment. But of course, there is no music, alas, in the world, so it's more of those sort of environmental sorts of things.
Very cool. And let's talk a little bit about your favorite part of your character. Sarah, I'll let you talk first in terms of Lily. What's the favorite thing about her?
My favorite part about the character Lily is that, well, in one part of the play, she can rant on and on and on and on about lots of nonsense that people just say, what? And yeah, in the monologue, she's just so silly in everything she does. She can bounce up and down, just waiting for her to spill out her feelings toward the family. And she can play with just pretend guns, play a little war game with her friends. Just be yourself and have messy ponytails.
And Ian, what's your favorite part about Asher?
I think Asher's impulsive. He's a little bit of a goofball, and I think I'm a little bit of a goofball. So it's a nice way to funnel that part of myself into the character, to use my energy and put it towards that. It connects with me as a person too. So.
Okay, and Lois Lowry talked a little bit about your character when we had the chance to meet with her first. Granbury Middle School, I'm going to come to you in a moment to be thinking about your question, because we're going to see a little excerpt from Lois Lowry as she talks here about the character of Asher, and then we're going to run a second scene where we're going to have the chance to see the giver and Jonas interact. But in this instance, Lois Lowry talks a little bit about Asher's inability to get the right word exactly, and gives you a sense of how she was trying to go for some humor with that particular character.
If you've read the book recently, you may remember that when Asher, Jonas's friend, is called to the stage to receive his assignment, and the elder on the stage is describing Asher's childhood, as they do for each kid, and the audience is chuckling, and Asher's kind of a funny character. And it describes when he was little, and learning language and misusing language. Here's a section that in the original manuscript was there, but it was later removed. They described how when Asher was 3 or 4, at whatever age they were learning different verbs. It described Asher learning the verb to yearn for something. You guys all know what that means. It's that you want something badly. And it described Asher making a very silly mistake that made the audience laugh. They said when Asher was little, he made this mistake. He was learning about the word to yearn, and he said, "Oh, I am urinating for my snack." Okay. That was silly, and it made the audience in the book laugh, but it was really too silly. And so I went back and took it out.
And now for a slightly more serious moment in the play, Jonas and the Giver.
It's not fair.
Explain.
It's not fair that nothing has color. I want to wake up in the morning and decide things. A blue tunic or a red one. I mean, I know it's not important what you wear.
Yeah, but it's the choosing that's important, isn't it?
Right. My little brother. No, that's inaccurate. The new child my family takes care of.
Gabriel?
He's really cute, and he's grabbing toys. And wouldn't it be great if we could hold up things that were bright red or bright yellow, and he could choose?
He might make the wrong choices.
Oh. That would matter later, wouldn't it?
Not safe.
Definitely not safe. I mean, what if people were allowed to choose their own mates and chose wrong? Or what if they were allowed to choose their own jobs?
Frightening, isn't it?
I can't even imagine it. We really have to protect people from wrong choices.
It's safer.
Much safer.
Come. I'm going to show you something that's definitely unsafe. It's called an elephant.
Thank you both very much. And that's a transfer of memory that hopefully we'll get some questions about. Granbury Middle School, let's go to you guys. A question right now? Feel free to stay with me, gentlemen.
What is the most difficult concept you've run across while doing the play?
Oh, well, I'll let you two speak to that right now. Jonas?
The most difficult concept, I would say the actual discovery of the memories, receiving them, trying to show the audience that I am experiencing that for the very first time. And a particular scene is when I discover what release is, when I see the video of my father essentially killing a new child, and that they were not showing that on stage. You see like a flicker of like a television screen on me, but it's my reactions. So I think that's definitely the most difficult thing to do.
And Nick, for you?
For me, there are many concepts that are kind of mind-boggling in the show, but for my character and for the actor, the most difficult one is what happens to the memories that I transfer to Rosemary or to Jonas, and if they don't take. When the transfer happened with Rosemary, it failed, and the memories came back to the people, and they almost destroyed the community. And for me to try to get a handle on So where were these memories, and how did they get assimilated back into the community? And did that then make the community come up a level in kind of awareness? You know, I mean, in a color tone, did it give them a little bit of color, you know? So for me, trying to figure that whole thing about the floating memories is kind of, yeah.
I want to go to a specific moment in this scene. If you guys could, you're saying, do you have the script right there, gentlemen? Because I know I've got it somewhere here too. And you're talking about, it's the choosing that's important to it. You say he might make wrong choices, and then your line when you're saying frightening, isn't it? Are you interested in pursuing that moment from the perspective of, I'm sincere, I'm in agreement with you? Or do you want the audience to have a little sense that that's a moment where we might see something else coming from you?
It is the giver's job to teach, if anybody can teach anybody anything, teach Jonas everything that he has. It is my job, I think, to get him to learn it. And so I do everything that I can. I push him, and I prod him, and I cajole him, and I laugh with him. And you know, the elephant, it's like, oh no, the elephant, this is really unsafe. Let's check it out, you know. So yeah, I think in many ways when I say that line about not safe and frightening and everything, oh yeah, it's much safer to, you know, that I'm being facetious.
Okay.
You know, that I'm trying to get around him another way.
I want to invite our Lift for Life students. Don't forget, if you've got a question, come right on over to the microphone. We've got more email questions. That's live@hectv.org. And Carol, this is a question for you that the cast members might be interested in hearing the answer to. And that question is, you've double cast roles. Yes. So what do you notice about the difference in performances between the actors, and how do you balance, I guess, the nature of, you want them to perform, you know, their thoughts and, you know, bring it forth, and then like also think, but I kind of like the way it was going in cast A, why don't we try that here? How's that balance out?
Well, we're dealing with a world of sameness, right? So everybody's just the same, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Wrong?
sure, I'm sure.
No, they're not. I cast the individuals I cast in this play because of their differentness and who they are. So part of it was assembling the chemistry of who might be an interesting fit as Asher, Fiona, Jonas, and the family, Lily and Jonas and his parents. I have two sets of young people working in the play because we're doing many, many performances at Edison Theater, and these guys are terrific students, so they couldn't really take a vacation for the month of January. How that plays out in rehearsal, I'll tell you frankly, friends, it feels like I direct the play twice. Everyone is in the room for all the rehearsals, and I know that you are studying each other when the other team is up. But the chemistry of real people in the space is not transferable, if I can use that word. There's a different kind of connection. There are different physical energies, mental energies, timings are always a little bit different. I'm sure Nick would concur that with the Jonases, each of the scenes is really different. And yet, as an ensemble, we're making one set of agreements. Okay, it's not free reign. Mitchell doesn't go wherever he chooses in a scene. He and Christian, who plays the part also, have the same physical plan for how we use the stage.
Good question. Don't forget you can email us live@hectv.org. Let's go back to our student groups and see what questions they have. Up to the Northlands of Minnesota again, where it may be even colder than it is here today. Hinckley, a question?
Hi. So if the community wanted to keep the people like in mind control, why would they let them know that there is an elsewhere, or tell this story of when the 12-year-old swam across the bridge?
Oh, now there's an interesting question. Okay, those of you performing the play, Ian, what do you think about that?
One thing I think, as far as the elsewhere, I think it's intentionally kept vague. It's, oh yes, when you're released, you go to elsewhere, and they stop at that line. They don't tell you where this elsewhere is, what the nature of it is. It just stops there, and that's intentional, I think, on the part of, you know, the people who run the community. As far as the story of the guy who jumps in the river, that's one of those things, I think, that just seeps through the cracks, that, you know, there's this, the community is trying to suppress the past, suppressed history, and yet inevitably people are going to come up with ways to transfer that history somehow. So it's that kind of urban legend idea, I think.
And it might be interesting to think, has that urban legend idea been planted? Is that a deliberate story that they've put in as opposed to something that's just seeped through, perhaps?
Perhaps to maintain fear, and it could be.
Oh, fear wouldn't be important to this society, surely not. Oak Grove Elementary, another question from you?
No.
Yes.
What is your question, Oak Grove?
What exactly do you think the theme of the story is?
What do you think the theme of the story is? Did I hear that right?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about that from a variety of perspectives. David, as you investigate it from a paternal perspective?
It's hard to pick one theme, but I guess one of it is the individuality and the sense that there is no individuality in this society, and how pretty much everyone goes along, does their job. Everything's fairly good for them. They don't know any different. But as Jonas learns, there are differences. There have been differences in the past, and this society just doesn't have that anymore.
Anna, what do you think?
I think that this is really about emotion in general. For example, one of the scenes between Jonas and the Giver gives him a scene of warfare, and it's a very interesting scene. It's very realistic. They have sounds playing, and it's scary. It's a scary sound, and he's so disturbed by that, as anyone would be. And then right after that, the Giver shows him family and love, and those are two such different things, but they're both strong emotions. Warfare is hatred, and then love. They're both such strong emotions, but they're, they kind of, it's hard to have true love without also having true sadness as well. That's what I think is the theme of the show.
Oh, very cool. Those are two interesting answers. And I'm really glad for this question. I didn't know if we'd have a chance to use this clip today or not, but we have a clip from Lois Lowry talking about one of the very important themes she thinks is true for the show as well. So I'll let you hear directly from the author as well.
But for me, one of the important things in the book, The Giver, is to understand the importance of choices that we make as human beings. And you can even bring that down to political choices. We all, once we're adults, we vote and we choose who we want our leaders to be. The people who live in the world of the Giver, they've sacrificed a lot of stuff. And so I think that's an important thing to remember. They've sacrificed freedom, really. They have a lot of good stuff in their world, but they have really no freedom. And so I think the message that I would take from the book is that we must be very, very careful about the choices we make and the sacrifices we make.
And I think one of the things that makes this story really cool, and I think it's true of any story that really reverberates over time and through generations, is that it has a lot of different themes for a lot of different people on a lot of different levels. I'll go to an email question we've got. And Sarah, this email question again deals with technical issues about the nature of color and of light and of making things seeable for the audience. It's like we see this right here now. They're asking specifically about this bookcase, obviously. And these books take on a different meaning for Jonas at some point in the show. Is the bookcase always gray?
Welcome to you. Good question. The bookcase is not always gray. We use a couple different techniques in the production to show the color as Jonas starts to see it. Some of them, as Mitchell mentioned earlier, are things like sleight of hand, where we use one prop that is gray and another prop that has the color. We switch them out when the audience isn't noticing. The set piece does change, and some of that is physical, and some of that will also be done with lighting. And some of the other moments in the play are also done more with lighting than with anything else. For example, that moment when he sees Fiona's hair change to look a red color that he never saw before. Our Fiona characters are going to be wearing a wig, and Carol actually spent some time with our lighting designer, John Wiley, in a lighting lab, which is very fun, I think, and they actually looked at different wigs and, artificial hair that is not actually red, but then seeing what it will do when they put different colors of lighting gel and using that to apply the light to the hair to make it look red just for that moment, but then not necessarily the whole time. And the whole way that we're approaching this general concept in the production is that the audience is seeing everything the way Jonas sees it. So they'll see everything in gray, and then when he sees that moment of color, they'll get to see it with him.
Very cool. Yeah. Come right on up. And your question is?
Why is the mother really not mentioned in the play?
Oh, interesting.
Well, she is. That's the good news. There is a mother and a father. The actress playing that role is Stephanie Stroman, and she was not able to be here today. But the family unit is, like Lois Lowry prescribed, a mother, a father, a son, and a daughter. Yes.
And speaking from the perspective of directing the mother character, is she a nurturing mother like we would always think about it? Is she, Beaver's mother on Leave It to Beaver? And of course I may be using an example that some of us would understand and the rest of the world would not. Is she more like, Family Ties mother, Michael Keaton's, oops, probably the wrong period of time again. Is she more like Lorelai Graham and the Gilmore Girls? What kind of mother do you see her as?
Well, Lois Lowry prescribed that. Mother is a magistrate, and she was chosen at the age of 12 for her job, the same way father was chosen for his job, perfect fit, the nurturer. So what we've been playing with in staging the scenes is just a reversal of gender stereotypes, but it doesn't mean that one feels and the other one doesn't. It's just a question of the specific little choices. It's father who holds Gabriel. At one point, Lily gets an opportunity to hold him, but mother doesn't. It's just that simple. And then when Jonas receives the memory of family and love, we are very specifically playing against those stereotypes the other way. So when the family gathers, it is the baby in mother's arms there. And it's, little touches like that. But essentially, it's a family unit that functions well. They care about each other. They laugh together.
Thanks very much for the email question we got about the black and white world here. In case you missed it earlier, yes, indeed, we've gone to a black and white world here because the world of The Giver, the story that we're talking about today, is, of course, a colorless world. And so don't forget, you can continue to email us questions to live@hectv.org, and you can send those to us after the program as well, and we'll be happy to forward them to Carol and the great folks at Metro Theater. We've got about 5 minutes left in the program, so I want to go to one last round of questions from each of our interactive schools. So we'll go up to the northwards of Minnesota first. Hinckley, a question from you?
I have a question. How are we going to show Jonas while he's receiving his memories? Like when he goes to the battlefield or he sees the elephant, how are you going to show that he's seeing all these different things? I'm just curious.
Well, I know we don't have much time, so I'll keep it a little brief, but essentially we're recreating the memories. We're staging. The elephant is actually really cool. It's we all kind of clump together and they form an elephant shape out of their different bodies, and it's a really cool thing. And we created scenes of warfare and starvation and the sled, so we're essentially acting them out.
So then, in essence, are you in one part of the stage, like looking, so to speak, into your mind's eye, and then another part of the stage is lit where we're seeing this action happen?
I am thrust into the experience. So I am in the middle of warfare.
Mm-hmm.
I don't observe someone break their leg from falling on a sled. I do it myself.
Okay.
So I experience the memory so it has more weight with me.
Okay. Oak Grove, a final question from you.
When I read the book, I told my mom and dad that I really liked it and maybe they should read it. And my mom read it, my dad read it. But my dad, at the end, when Jonas was on the sled, he said that he thought that he had died, and me and my mom didn't think that. What was your perspective of it?
Oh, that's a great question, and this gives me a chance to mention that if you're interested in knowing what Lois Lowry, the author, thinks of that moment, then we've got that in a previous program, our conversation with her, which you can see on our hectv.org website. Carol, I'll let you speak to that.
The ending of the book is ambiguous, and Eric Coble has written a stage adaptation which is also open to interpretation, I think. It's very similar to the book. As a director, I have to make a choice. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this story is not because it's bleak, but because I think it does have a hopeful direction for us. As we go into a world that's strange and different and dangerous, I want to come through that experience with some hope for the future. So that's what I'm investing in the way we stage it, but I think it's still open to interpretation. And my hunch is that if your dad saw that end of the play, he might stick to his opinion.
Oh, good. Yes, go right ahead.
Were you all specifically chosen, or did you audition to do the play?
Oh, what was the casting process like? And Sarah, go ahead.
We auditioned in a place at the Metro Theater building, and so there were lots of people that came around from all sorts of places, and we all said different kinds of monologues we knew, and some of us memorized, some of us just read from a paper. And then when Carol picked her people, then she brought the people back, and then we auditioned again.
Very cool. And did you audition them with each other in the sense that I want to see how this family unit looks together? David and Stephanie and these kids all look like a unit that would work physically, etc.?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Very good. We've got just about a minute and a half left. Don't forget to our interactive groups. If you have more questions, email them to us at live@hectv.org. And as we go to this final question here from Live for Life, we'll begin to go back to the world of color as we end the program, and we come back to the rest of the real world here. Go right ahead.
It's too tall.
We'll go walk right up to it, sir.
Okay. How you gonna portray Jonas having the little stirrings and the peels?
The stirring question. 1 minute they're shouting in my ear, Jonas.
Jonas, when they're together as a family, they share their dreams. It's part of their routine of the community. So Jonas essentially reports his dream. You don't actually see it, but he tells the story. And what we really had to work on was making it not carry so much weight. It's just odd for him. He doesn't realize what it is. It's just something that's kind of strange. He doesn't realize what that actually means is happening to him. So they just give him a pill and poof, it's gone.
Thanks for that question, and thanks to everybody for joining us. Opera Theater St. Louis for giving us the space, the rehearsal space. Metro Theater, it's always a pleasure. You want to see this production, it's throughout the month of January, so go to metrotheatercompany.org or the WashU Edison Theater website to find out more. We'll be at Edison Theater for our program January 5th to see what it's like to stage this play and bring it to life. As always, it's great to be with you guys for HECTV Live. We look forward to connecting to you again for another episode of The Giver in January. Bye, everybody.